I'm so excited for the Seattle Kraken to beat the brakes off the San Jose Sharks that I thought the game was today. It is this weekend, but we have to wait. I have to wait at least one more day to see if the Seattle Kraken can indeed go streaking. We'll talk about that, plus do a touch-in on the Coachella Valley Firebirds on today's episode of Locked On Kraken.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what do you say, Seattle hockey fans? Welcome to another episode of Locked On Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where we bring you your favorite team, the Seattle Kraken, every single day. I'm your host, Erica L. Ayala. I am also an analyst at CBS Sports, and later tonight, I will be in studio in Stamford, Connecticut, where I am right now. Not in studio in Stamford. And I will be talking about the women's Final Four. So if you want to check me out talking about women's basketball, then head to CBS Sports HQ. I will be with Chris Williamson in studio pregame, halftime, and then after both games tonight. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. New customers at FanDuel now, you can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. And if you want to know who maybe you should put a wager on for women's basketball, make sure you tune in to CBSSports.com. I said in the cold open all day yesterday. Now, granted, I have traveled back and forth to the East Coast 3 times already this week. Yes, this week. I really thought we had a game today. I was so excited. I was like, we're going to break it down. It's a game day, all of the good stuff. The game is tomorrow, and that's fine. The Seattle Kraken will take on the San Jose Sharks tomorrow, continuing on their road trip. This is the final road trip for the Seattle Kraken. Then they play 2 games at home, and then that's all she wrote. But we know that Jordan Eberle has seemingly invigorated this team, certainly has invigorated this podcast host with how he's been approaching the last handful of games. It's about pride and dignity. I added discipline there, and I love this approach. And so do I think the Seattle Kraken can go streaking, aka build a winning streak? Well, yeah, we can absolutely beat the San Jose Sharks, and we really need to beat the San Jose Sharks. The Sharks lead the season series, if you can even believe it. This is a team tank all the way since the beginning of time, aka the beginning of this podcast. We can beat the San Jose Sharks, but they have a series lead 2-1 over us. So there's no way that the Seattle Kraken can win this series. I talked about winning series, and that's going to be a focus of mine. I think it should be a focus of the Krakens. I just love when you can say it's a baseball thing for me, or at least that's how I learned to think about it that way. Yeah, well, maybe you beat us last time, but who has the season series? Ugh. And you know what? At the end of the day, winning series, isn't that exactly what you have to do in the playoffs? So I want us to win. We can't win the season series. We can only tie it. The San Jose Sharks beat the Seattle Kraken 8-5 on November 29th. Yeah, we got off to a bad start against San Jose. On November 30th, the Sharks also won 4-2. So in the immediate history, the Seattle Kraken earned the most recent win, 6-2, in 2025. So this is 2025. It's the year of Beniers, all of the things. So we're going to keep that going. I was listening to an episode of Home Ice, which is, of course, through our Tegna partners at King. And I heard Dan Bylsma talking about what he felt the growth of this team was. And he talked about focusing on the last 18 games, the 18 games at the time of the recording, of course, that came immediately after that Four Nations break. And we've been talking about this as well, that was a what was the term that he used? It was an opportunity, I'm going to summarize, but it was an opportunity for the team to evaluate. I believe that's what he said. It was the time for the team to evaluate where they stood. And when the team as a whole, collectively, I'm sure individually as a coaching staff, when they evaluated and assessed how this team had performed, they didn't like what they saw. We've talked about that on this show. I've been talking about that. Yeah, there's a lot of things that I haven't liked. But in the last few games, or since that All-Star Four Nations break, what we heard Dan Bylsma say is that the team has looked a little different. And we've talked about that on this show. He used a few terms here. He said fast, quick, and aggressive. And that kind of sounds to me like, fun, fast, forward checking. This team has played different since the Four Nations break. Things were kind of already, the writing was on the wall, the spaghetti was on the wall. I don't know. But we kind of knew this team was not headed. We knew this team was not headed for the playoffs by Four Nations. But the fact that they could reset, for me, I like that. I like that this team can do that. I wish it hadn't taken so long. And then I think there was another reset, a true reset after the trade deadline. Like I said, I might need to do some sleuthing, some recon, because I would hate to think that some of the players that have been relocated, that were traded at the trade deadline, were impacting perhaps a less than positive atmosphere. Sometimes things just don't work out. And you can say that in earnest, and things just didn't work out. Sometimes there are things that people say and they leave in a way where you can't really take back what you said. You can't really come back from what you said or what you did or how you behaved. That's real too. Either way, I don't know if that's a situation happening for the Seattle Kraken or not. There's a different approach. There's a lightness. And I will add this. Sometimes when people leave, whether they choose to leave, whether the situation dictated, sometimes you have a reckoning and you have to sit with what you did or didn't do. And so there's any combination of those things that could be happening with the Seattle Kraken, but this is a different team. I love this, fast, quick, and aggressive. And he added with more consistency. That's been my biggest gripe. This has been an inconsistent team this season up until recently. So I love that. So when I talk about, can we go streaking? Yes, we can absolutely beat the San Jose Sharks. When we look at how these teams measure up, power play, 23rd and 25th power plays in the NHL, 19% for the San Jose Sharks, 18.8% for your Seattle Kraken, 27th and 20th in the penalty kill. The PK we've talked a lot about in the last handful of games for the Seattle Kraken. They have the edge here, 77.3% on the PK, a 74% PK for the Sharks. Face-off percentage, 27th and 24th overall in the NHL, 48.7% for the Kraken, 47.8% for the San Jose Sharks. The Sharks, they score about 2.57 goals per game while giving up 3.73 goals per game. The Seattle Kraken give up about 3.18 goals per game while scoring 3 goals per game. So this is a team that really has to gut it out, grind it out. When we look at the last 10 games, the Sharks are 3-6-1. The Kraken 4-4-2. With a fantastic performance by Joey Daccord, might I add. Talked about that a lot yesterday. We need to win games against a team like the San Jose Sharks, who we are at minimum level with. Right now, the stats, we're level with them. We need to win games. We need to find that edge, something that's going to take us over the edge to get the win. And I love that Eberle is challenging the team, not just to look to this season and to a specific game, but also the implications, right? The ripple effect, that the preparation that they do now, how it can impact next season. I said on yesterday's episode, you also have to think about what that means for contracts, what that means for playing times, what that means for roles and leadership and things of that nature. And so I do think there's a renewed focus for this Kraken team. And I think it comes at a really good time because the Seattle Kraken, I mean, if we talk about going streaking, of course, I want that, if you're an everydayer or an OGer, I want this game. I want the Seattle Kraken to win this game to prove that they can beat a team like the San Jose Sharks who don't like defense and they tank. Stop it. Come on. Play with some moxie, boys. That being said, a streak, you can go on a 2-game win streak, but a streak of 3 or more wins? Oh, come on. That sounds even better. And I know some of you want to get a high draft pick. I've talked about this before. I don't know what's realistic for the Seattle Kraken if they're not going to get that number 1 pick as far as talent that's going to be generational talent, not getting the sense that this is a super deep draft. And so is that something that the Seattle Kraken higher ups are taking into consideration? I honestly don't really think so. I think the Kraken have the bottom has fallen out to such a degree this season where some things are just, you cannot ignore what needs to be done anymore with this team. And that is a lot. I've been saying it for a while. What do you go do? How do you make changes for a team that at times has looked like they need a little bit of everything? But anyway, I digress. Can we go streaking? This is how the season wraps up. We got the San Jose Sharks tomorrow, not today, Friday. My bad. And then it's a back-to-back LA, Utah. So we will definitely see Philip Grubauer in net at some point. And then you take on the Vegas Golden Knights before coming home to take on St. Louis, one of the red hot team right now in the NHL. And then you take on the Kings again. I feel good about San Jose. I want to feel good about San Jose. I want to feel good about Utah. I really want the Seattle Kraken to take it to St. Louis. LA twice and the Vegas Golden Knights. Those are playoff bound teams. St. Louis looking like they will be as well. You don't know. I mean, and again, consistency has been something that this team has not done really well. So I don't know. I mean, with any game, with any team we're taking on, you can't say things with certainty. But I would like to think that if we take a look at this again, I want the San Jose game. I want the Utah game. I want the St. Louis game. Can they win 3 out of their next 6 games? Can they win more than 3? What is realistic for the Seattle Kraken team? Let me know in the comments. What games do you want to see the Seattle Kraken be able to pull off? I want Utah. I really want this San Jose game on Saturday. And I want the Blues as well. Those are the 3 wins that I want. Are there teams left that we have left in the season that you want to see the Kraken beat? That is the question of the day. Let me know in the comments. Coming up on today's episode of Locked On Kraken, I want to take you to home ice. I'm not going to play the clip, but I want to reflect on the last home ice episode because I know I've been talking a lot about Jani Nyman, but there's just like this fun little anecdote that was in that episode. But it also, the conversation with Nyman, it hinted on something that I've talked about a lot in the last postseason for the Kansas City Mavericks and the Coachella Valley Firebirds, and that is continuity. If you hear my interviews, when I interviewed Dan Bylsma at training camp about how he was going to create continuity within the system, I talked to Tad O'Had all the time about the continuity and how it's different from any other partnership that he's ever experienced in the ECHL. Those things matter, and Jani Nyman is an example of why they matter. We're going to talk about that coming up on today's episode of Locked On Kraken. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by our friends at 5 Hour Energy. You know, daylight savings snuck up on a lot of people again, and you might be feeling that lost hour of sleep. Or if you're like me and you're always on the road in different, time zones and happen to cover a team in a different time zone, 5 Hour Energy, it has your back. The extra sunshine or the time on the road can be fun for some, but sometimes you just need a little bit of a boost to power through. I understand that for sure. So whether you're staying up late watching NCAA tournament or me talking about the NCAA tournament, squeezing in a round of golf after work, or just trying to keep up with your busy day, 5-Hour Energy gives you a quick, refreshing pick-me-up whenever you need it. And listen, I've been watching Kraken games staying up late, watching March Madness staying up late, and you do need that extra boost. And again, 5-Hour Energy is a great way to do that. And there's so many different flavors also that you can check out, such as, you've got Tropical Burst, you've got Peach Mango. I told you, I'm always a sucker for anything peach mango, Blue Raspberry. You can head to 5hourenergy.com to find over 15 flavors to choose from. Watermelon is another one. You can create your own 12-pack or 24-pack and have it delivered right to your door. But if you need one now, you can grab 5-Hour Energy shot at all local grocery and convenience stores. I mean, how convenient is it to get that pick-me-up when you need it? Because 5-Hour Energy, they're everywhere. So stock up today and stay energized. Thanks as always for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination. Erica L. Ayala here. I'm so juiced up for March Madness, for the Seattle Kraken to go streaking, that I thought today was Saturday, or I thought Saturday's game was today. Either way, I didn't know what the date or day was or when the game was. But either way, I'm pretty excited. And what I'm also excited about is Jani Nyman. He, again, there was a great little feature on Home Ice. I think it aired on the 30th. So it's a few days, about a week old now. But I wanted to circle back to it. I was watching that segment again. It came up on my feed and I watched it. And Jani said something that I really wanted to harp on. Because, he's the youngest player that's on the Kraken roster right now. I continue to tell you as we do our Firebirds check-in, which we will do in the next segment, that, until recently, the numbers that he was putting up for the Firebirds, they were the best numbers for that team, Coachella Valley, as they look to make a playoff push. But one thing that he was talking about and that the feature shed light on is, of course, that Jani, I've played clips on Locked On Kraken. He's still very much getting comfortable and confident speaking English. And first of all, in this segment, I loved it because he talks about one of the ways that he is getting more confident, because he seems to understand English, but like me, I understand Spanish. I can read Spanish, but speaking it back is a little bit, I have to overthink sometimes, I'm very conscious of that. I'm not, that's not my first language. So I get the sense that that's how things are for Nyman as well. And the thing that he does to help with his English is he said he watches Netflix. I right now am watching Pulse on Netflix. We are not sponsored, but totally open to it. I'm watching Pulse right now. It's like a medical, doctor, ER emergency drama kind of vibe. It's set in Miami. I'm deciding how I feel about it. The point is not what I'm watching on Netflix, but I just thought that was a fun little anecdote and inspired me to listen to more music in languages that I'm trying to learn. I will be in Milano Cortina for the Olympics, so I am practicing my Italian, or listening to more Italian. I've been listening to that song, Volare, oh, cantare, oh. It's a really catchy song. Anyway, I love that little nugget. It's inspired me to, watch more Netflix and also listen to more Italian /Spanish /French, all the Romance languages. The other thing, though, speaking of Romance languages, for some, no judgment, hockey, right, is the passionate sport that we all love. That's why we're here on Locked On Kraken, and I'm bringing you little nuggets from your favorite team. Dan Bylsma weighed in on Nyman, and he had a really interesting approach to how he discovers if and what any language barriers are. And I appreciate it so much that Dan Bylsma started by saying he doesn't make assumptions about what his players do or don't know, and vice versa, what he does or doesn't know about how to communicate with each other, just generally, and how to communicate hockey with each other. And he had this little saying on home ice where he said that there was a lot of, because he worked with Jani Nyman last year at Coachella Valley, and he said there was a lot of just Nyman saying yes, yes, yes. And that was a way of him assessing, okay, there, let me think about how to communicate so that he's not just, this is what I got from it, that he's not just saying yes, but that there is comprehension and understanding. And so Dan Bylsma says that first work that he will do with a player, regardless of, and he said, first thing I try to do is understand if there is a language barrier. And he does that individually, one-on-one. Then he talked about also, of course, with the example with the Seattle Kraken, that Nyman has some fellow Finnish players, and that sometimes he will say something, or the coaching staff will say something to Nyman, and then he will have Eli Tolvanen or Kaapo Kakko say something, and there's a different level of understanding, which completely makes sense. I do think overall, and I cover a few different sports, and I think y'all know that I'm a huge baseball fan, and so is Dan Bylsma. There's so many freaking baseball fanatics associated with the Seattle Kraken team. I freaking love it. It's baseball. Opening day for the Mets today. Yeah, I'm super pumped, super excited. Anyway, he grew up a Detroit Tigers fan, and he talked about that also on home ice, which I absolutely loved. But I continue to be fascinated and really impressed by how Dan Bylsma approaches getting to know people. That's huge for a coach. And there is a time in sports, and I think it still exists, Tortorella, maybe it still exists in hockey, where it's a very much, I'm the coach, you're the player, do as I say, even sometimes do as I say, not as I do, whatever the case is. I get the sense that Dan Bylsma wants to build a relationship, a professional working relationship, and a relationship should be open communication, within reason, but there should be open and respectful communication, understanding, learning of each other so that you can set expectations collectively together. I'm so impressed. I loved hearing that home ice story. I'm pretty sure I spoke longer than the actual segment was, but I geek out about this stuff. I freaking love it. Jani Nyman using Netflix shows and movies, I suppose, to help with his English, to get more confident and comfortable with it. He, of course, leans on his Finnish countrymen, but I really liked and continue to respect how Dan Bylsma goes about creating his team. And that's why I really liked the question that was asked about, how this team has grown, but also that I think we're starting to see finally the vision that Dan Bylsma had all along. And I get the sense that Dan Bylsma is not everyone's favorite coach. I've told you before, I've told you a few times that I think we can be critical of how the season has gone in certain respects, but that to me didn't mean to throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. I've always just really, I still believe in what Dan Bylsma and his coaching staff want to bring to this franchise. And sometimes those things take time. And this was kind of painful at times to see this team struggle through the process. But that's why I've really latched on to what Jordan Eberle said, because for me, Jordan Eberle is now the validation that this team has to not just accept and receive what Dan Bylsma and the coaching staff are saying, but they have to actively work to make it come true. And I don't want to make it sound as though I think that this team didn't know that, but sometimes you need a peer or someone a little closer to a peer, aka your captain, to reinforce that. I've said it before, this team seemed a little bit lost in themselves at times, lost in the process, maybe at times, lost in maybe trying to, whether it's overcomplicate, grip the stick too hard, but they just seem lost. And I do have a strong sense that Jordan Eberle, in part, has been a part of steadying this team, refocusing this team, activating the pride for this team. You know, I can't say enough. I'm so impressed with Eberle as a leader. I believe in what Dan Bylsma and his coaching staff want to do with this team. And these last few games, since the trade deadline, I think that we've started to see that come to pass. And I hope so. So yes, to answer my question from the first segment, do I think the Seattle Kraken can go streaking? Abso-freaking-lutely, but they have to lean into it. They have to lean into it. And again, I know I keep talking about the tanking thing because I know some people are listening to this and they want the Seattle Kraken to lose more games so that they can get a more beneficial draft pick. I don't think we're going to get the number 1 pick. I don't think we were ever going to get the number. I mean, the odds would say we weren't. And I don't know that sacrificing the opportunity, HC opportunity, sacrificing the opportunity to be a better team now, to work through the muck of it now, I don't think that that is a good bet. You're still making a bet on the Kraken, but I want to lean into habits. I want to lean into having faith and trusting this coaching staff as opposed to arbitrary numbers from a theoretical notion that losing and being okay with losing will ultimately make you a winner. Failure, losing, and how you accept it. They're two different things for me. You can accept a failure. You did not meet the mission. The Kraken have not met their mission for this season, and they haven't given up on the mission overall. When you tank or when you're okay with your team losing, that's the difference for me. You're okay with giving up on the mission, aborting the mission completely. Because the mission and the goal for every team is to win a Stanley Cup. And I'm not sold that the best way even, and certainly not the only way, I'm not even sold that the best way to do that is by introducing the idea of tanking into your organization. Now, I covered the WNBA, and Sue Bird herself, the Seattle legend, and now part owner of your very own Seattle Storm, will say, best way to a championship is get the number 1 pick. That's what she believes. And she would know from her lived experience. That being said, she also almost left Seattle for New York until she knew that the Storm had the number 1 pick and that Stewie, Brianna Stewart, would be the number 1 pick. And then Stewie won. She won some times in Seattle. But you know what Stewie also did? She came to New York in free agency. And the New York Liberty happened to have Sabrina Ionescu, but only one number 1 pick. And she built a winner there. And the Liberty, they did not build that team through the draft. Aces, yes. Storm, yes. New York Liberty, heck no. They fought, they clawed, and they are WNBA champions. And that's what I want for the Seattle Kraken, baby. That's what I want. Let's go. Coming up next, who are some of those players of the future who could help this team along? Well, let's check in on your Coachella Valley Firebirds as we wrap up today's episode of Locked On Kraken. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Now, we know March Madness is underway. As I said, I have some March Madness responsibilities. UCLA taking on UConn, South Carolina taking on Texas, a great Final Four also with the men's tournament, Auburn and Duke's getting a lot of attention. And so, listen, if you want to get in on that action, FanDuel is the place to go because new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins, 200 extra bucks to use on anything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories, and of course, who's cutting down the net. And so you can keep an eye on underdogs. There's not really a lot of underdogs in either field, just got to let you know. But you can keep up with what's happening in the tournament every single day. And when you place your bet, when you win your bet, you can get your money instantly. FanDuel is simple to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com to get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. All right, Seattle hockey fans, we're wrapping this thing up because I got to go to the studio. I got really fired up at the end of that last segment. Did you see that? Did you feel it? Did you hear it? Okay. I got pretty fired up. And that's because I do believe in the future. And the future, of course, includes your Coachella Valley Firebirds, currently still waiting to clinch, but should be happening anytime soon now. They sit at 77 points right now. Had a few hiccups, some setbacks. Jagger Firkus, though, has been doing pretty solid. But, the Coachella Valley Firebirds, 77 points. They're behind Abbotsford at 81, Ontario at 82, and the Eagles at 86 in the Pacific Division. All three of those teams I just mentioned have already officially clinched, but there's still plenty of room for your Coachella Valley Firebirds. They just gotta kind of get it all together. So we know the other night, Victor Osman, he got a 29 save shutout. 4-0 was the final score. That was over the Wolves and over the Chicago Wolves. And we also saw that Ben Myers got another goal there. Jagger Firkus, Brandon Biro assisted there. Firkus had a power play goal that made it 3-0. And again, Osman, that was his first AHL shutout. 29 save performance. He's now 2-0-1-0. The power play for the Firebirds, 2 for 4. The penalty kill was perfect. The Firebirds outshot the Chicago Wolves 41-29 in that game. So that was a good one. Unfortunately, the Coachella Valley Firebirds, though, they fell the other night. The Coachella Valley Firebirds, they fell 3-1 to Colorado, who I just mentioned is the top team there. I believe it was Firkus who got the lone goal. It was Edward Shala who got that goal. Yeah, I remember that guy. We've had him on the pod before. Edward Shala got the goal there. But that's really all she wrote. When you look at the power play, neither team scored on the power play, so both were perfect on the penalty kill. But Colorado scored in the first and second frame, so 2 early goals or 2 unanswered early on, and then it was Shala who was able to score the third goal overall of the game. But then Mark Senden made it 3-1 for the Eagles. So a little bit of a different cadence as we get closer to the playoffs than maybe what we are used to seeing from the Coachella Valley Firebirds. The Firebirds, though, do have a chance to clean up some points. They will be taking on the Henderson Silver Knights. That game is coming up. Let me make sure I get you right. Is it Friday or Saturday? I think it is a Saturday game. Nope, it's tonight. There we go. I don't know what's going on. What's today? Friday, April 4th. That's today. Your Coachella Valley Firebirds will take on Henderson. And, this is a Henderson team that if we look at the standings, they're at the bottom of the barrel. They have 58 points compared to 73 for the 77 for the Firebirds. So again, I talked about this with the Kraken. When you have an opportunity to win games against, or when you have an opportunity to play against teams that you're leading when it comes to the standings, you have to take those opportunities. You play the game to see how everything's going to shake out. But the Seattle Kraken have played spoiler. Hello. We've played spoiler to some teams looking to move on to the playoffs in the not so distant past. So, got to be careful. Play your game, attack it, keep your eye on the prize, know what the focus is. And the focus is for this team to once again get into the playoffs, which they are in position to do. Now you just have to get over the hump, get you some points, and lock that thing up. So I'm excited. Your Coachella Valley Firebirds play tonight. Your Seattle Kraken play tomorrow. And either way, I will be here to talk about it all on the next episode of Locked On Kraken, where we do expect to also talk and touch base on the Kansas City Mavericks, who have been playoff bound a time or two, and we want to see what they're up to. So we will do all of that on the next episode of Locked On Kraken. Until then, please make sure you subscribe, rate, review the show, leave a comment. I told you, question of the day: what teams do you want to see the Seattle Kraken be able to get a win against as we close out the regular season? And you know how we do. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to one another and hold fast, stay true, and loud and proud. I'm always going to say, let's go Kraken. I'll catch you on the next episode. Peace out, everybody.